What are your life priorities? What are your life priorities? Now, this is different from time priorities or time management. Let's define these terms. Time priorities or time management are how you divide the hours in a day to your priorities. So your priority on Mondays to go to work for 8 hours or 10 hours, 6 hours, whatever it is, and you allocate the hours of your day to that priority, which is work. Or you're going to school for a certain period of time. That's managing your time from a priority. So that's time priority. What's a life priority? A life priority or life priorities are choosing major areas of your life where you spend your days. This is not time management. This is deciding what your priorities are in life, what the major priorities are in your life, and where you end up spending your days, the things you end up doing. So how do you decide what your life priorities are? Now, it doesn't matter how young or old you are. Someone may be saying, well, Pastor Chris, I'm getting ready for retirement, or I'm in retirement years. This is great for the young people. This gets them started right. And that's true. But if these are some things that you haven't thought about, it doesn't matter where you are in your life, these things can be employed and thought about and practiced even now. May come a little bit more difficult, I get that, but no better time to start than the present. So how do you figure out or determine what your life priorities are? Well, first of all, of course, Psalm 37 verses 4 and 5, we have to pray about those. Okay, God, here I am. What are my life priorities? He will give us the desires of our hearts. Commit our ways to the Lord. You can't commit your ways to the Lord if you don't know what your ways are. Trust in Him and He'll bring them to pass if we're faithful to Him and choosing His will and way. So how do you know what your life priorities are? Well, you have to ask 3 questions. There are 3 questions that you need to ask. Number 1, what is required of me? What is required of me? So what's required of most people today is that they work. So would work be a life priority? Yeah, sure. Now, if you're a young person and you're in school, your parents are telling you, what is your child's priority? Education. Their education is their priority. Their schooling is their priority. So what is required of me? That's a very important question. What things are required of me? If you're going to know your life priorities, what things are required of you? Second question, what will honor God? What will honor God? This is taking a step back and looking at the big picture. What will honor God? And then the third question to ask is this within my strength zone? In other words, what is your divine design? How has God made you? And are you implementing the gifts and talents that God has given you in the thing that you are doing? So is this within your strength zone? Number 1, what is required of me? Number 2, what will honor God? Number 3, what is within my strength zone? It was William Gladstone who said, "He is a wise man who wastes no energy on pursuits for which he is not fitted. And he is wiser still who from among the things he can do well, chooses and resolutely follows the best." Now, a lot of folk in life that involving themselves in many, many different things and pursuits. And what is the saying? A jack of all trades, but a master of none. In Christ Object Lessons, it says, "A resolute purpose, persistent industry, and careful economy of time will enable men and women to acquire knowledge and mental discipline, which will qualify them for almost any position of influence and usefulness." Isn't that an encouraging quote? So how do you define your life purposes? What are your life purposes? For me, when I sat down and worked through this exercise, my life purposes fall under an acronym, which is JOY. You've probably heard this acronym before. JOY, Jesus, others, yourself. Jesus first, others second, yourself last. And so I kind of put my life priorities within that acronym. Jesus, okay, that's got to be certainly a priority. Others, that's a priority. And then myself, yes, I got to take care of myself. So when it comes to God being a priority, that includes my morning devotions, time with God. That includes coming to church and worshiping our great God, fellowshipping with the saints. putting God first, making him a priority, includes giving a faithful tithe and offering. It includes serving and working for him and the church, the cause, the mission of the church. So all of those things fall under God. God is my priority. Then under others, I broke them down among three different categories. One, that would be family. Family has got to be a priority, right? Family's a priority. Second one would be friends. And then a third one would be community. Third one would be community. And so under family, we're a long way from our family, have always been in ministry. And so we've had to practice, Jennifer and I have had to practice long-distance grandparenting and try to find creative ways in which the grandkids can stay in touch with their grandparents, because they haven't been able to see them all the time. So we're just so grateful for the inventions of Skype and FaceTime and all of these other gadgets and technology that help out. But long-distance grandparenting, so we've had to deal with that in a special sense with family. And then, of course, community. And for me, because it's my work and because it's my life calling, how I can benefit and contribute to the community in which I live, certainly from a gospel perspective. So what are your life priorities? What are your life priorities? Now, you don't want just 3 life priorities, because your life will be very boring and meaningless, and you can get lazy. But you don't want more than 7 priorities, because you could easily become burned out and stressed out. So you have to pray about it and look at it and figure out some things. When we moved to Canada, we were asked to help, and I've told you before, we were a part of the literature evangelism program there in Ontario. And I'd been asked to be the director's assistant, and we essentially had to really rebuild the work there in Ontario. He was doing a great job, but there were some things that had happened that had destabilized the program. So he asked me to help him. So we prayed, we looked at what needed to be done, we laid out our plans and proposals, and we went to work. Now, when we went to work very busy. We had great ambitions. We had a lot that was on our plates. And within a year and a half of being married, was it a year and a half? About a year and a half, within a year and a half of being married, Aaron came along. And then within 5 years, we had 2 girls, so we had 3 kids. And I had not adjusted the pace in which I was working to cater for the new arrivals in our home, even though they'd all been planned for, or at least most had been planned for initially. And so I was overworking, and poor Jen was taking all the care of the kids while I was out running around doing ministry for God. And we had, on average, every summer we were running a youth rush program of about 75 students all across Ontario. We had an all-year-round program where students would take a year off college or university and spend it with us for a year, going door to door, doing evangelism. We were training full-time and part-time literature evangelists. That included recruiting. I was working with the leaders in between summer programs. And then we also initiated the drug prevention program. Some of you may be familiar with the Listen and Winner magazines. They used to be produced by Review and Herald. They were put in public schools as a way for teachers to use to teach drug prevention in schools. These were our materials. And so we would train workers to go to businesses to raise funds to put these materials into schools. We held drug prevention rallies. We were crazy. We were just absolutely crazy doing all of this. And all the while, I'm burning out. All the while, my health is going down. All the while, Jen's struggling and dealing with the kids, mostly on her own. And it wouldn't be, I was there for 7 years, wouldn't be for the last couple of years of my life that it finally dawned on me what was going on. And I realized that even though my family and the kids were a priority, I hadn't actually adjusted my time schedule to make sure that I spent time with my family. And anyone have a problem with this, or is this just me? Just struggling managing the time and maybe some of the priorities. But that's where I was at. And I needed to pare down the work hours in order to share them with other life priorities, which was my wife and my children. And things have been so much better since that change came about. Selecting your life priorities, and this was a big lesson for me, selecting life priorities means nothing if we're not spending time in those areas of our lives. You may say God's important, but is he really? Just find out what you're doing and where you are and how you spend your money. And look at your calendar, right? It makes no sense having life priorities when you're not spending time in those areas. If we're going to burn brightly for God, we have to be accountable. We have to be accountable to ourselves and to our spouses and to those around us. When the short time on earth is over, and we know great things are still to happen because eternity is yet before us, but we ought to have no regrets about how we lived our lives during this short life here on planet Earth. So if you don't take charge of your life, the truth of the matter is others will. Others will take charge of your life if you don't. First, you want to pay attention to where you spend your days. Second, then you want to divide and you want to decide how to allocate your days with your dominant interests, with those priorities. And so, make sure to be on purpose. What is your specific purpose here on planet Earth? Why do you exist? What has God asked you to do? Secondly, you want to be sure to live your life's priorities. Take charge of your life by God's grace. And thirdly and lastly, remember, very important principle, if we're going to burn brightly for God, if we're going to be successful, success comes with aptitude and attitude. Aptitude and attitude. Romans chapter 10 verse 2, even though this verse speaks to many other things, I want to just read it to you if you don't mind. Romans chapter 10 verse 2, Paul says that I bear witness that they have a zeal for God, but not according to knowledge. We could say folk had a great attitude, but they didn't know what they were doing. Now, there's more to this verse, and certainly there is. There's more to it dealing with Israel and how Paul lived his life, and he was persecuting the Christians. He had a lot of zeal for God, but it was misdirected zeal. But on the surface, we can say here are folk who have a great attitude, but certainly lack understanding. So success comes with aptitude, and it also comes with attitude. So let's talk about ability and aptitude just real quickly. Ability simply enables you to perform competently in all areas of your life. Ability allows you to perform competently in all areas of your life. Ability is derived from God-given talent, from aptitude, and also from skill. Working at things, developing and honing those skills. So that's ability. It enables you to perform competently. Attitude, on the other hand, what is attitude? It's really your mental outlook on life. Some people are the ultimate optimists, some are the ultimate pessimists, some are in between. Attitude is your mental outlook on life. It's how you respond to life's experiences. It's how you respond to life's experiences, whether negatively or positively. So, if without ability, in other words, we would be incompetent. Without a positive outlook, we won't have the confidence needed to reach our potential, the potential God has in mind for us. So both are absolutely needed. Let me share a brief story to kind of put it in focus. And I read this story about a guy who was 65. He actually decided he would run his first long-distance run. It was about 6.2 miles. He prepared for it, did everything necessary, and he ran it. And he was surprised that he did fairly well, and he was very comfortable running in this short marathon. He decided that he would sign up to join the next marathon, which wasn't too much later down the track, and it was double the distance. So it would be a 12.4-mile run. Well, by the time he reached the 7-mile mark, he was doing okay, but then he hit the 8-mile mark, and his legs felt like they were burning. By the time he hit the 9th mile mark, he felt like his body was about ready to collapse. And by the time he hit the 10th mile mark, he wondered to himself out loud why anyone on earth would be involved in running this long a distance, this great a distance. And finally, he made it to the finish line. Now, when he made it to the finish line, there was another race that was already in session. It started earlier, and it was a marathon. It was the 26.2 mile race. And people were starting to come in from that run, and he was at the finish line, and he was, recomposing, catching his breath. And he noticed an older gentleman who crossed the finish line, and it like he just started 100 meters ago, and he just breezed through the finish line. And he was really impressed with this gentleman who had just run a 26.2 mile run, a marathon. So he stopped to talk with him just a little bit. And he asked him, how do you feel after just running 26.2 miles? And the elderly gentleman said, I feel better than ever. This is my fourth race, and I feel great. Well, he was quite embarrassed, this gentleman. He was 33 years of age, and here he is talking to a 65-year-old. He'd barely gotten through the 14-mile marathon, or 12-mile marathon, and here's a 65-year-old that just ran a 26.2-mile marathon. Man, he was embarrassed. He said to him, I don't think I could ever run that marathon. I don't think I could ever do it. And the older man replied words that he wouldn't forget, and it made a difference. He said, young man, you have the physical ability to run 26.2 miles with the right training. If I can do it, you can do it. But as long as you have a mental barrier about the distance, you're right. You will never run a marathon. Well, he thought about those words. He let those words sink in. Mental barrier. Can't do it. I've got to break through. And he ended up breaking through. He did the necessary went through the necessary training. A year later, he ran his first marathon, the first of 7 in 7 years. He had a change of attitude. He had a change of attitude. He got the training, aptitude, but it was his attitude that was limiting him from reaching his potential. And so he was able to run his first of 7 in 7 years. Someone said ability and attitude are like a dynamic duo. You can't separate those two key ingredients. We've all seen it. You've got folk maybe in the workplace or at school, they have a great attitude, but maybe performing poorly in school or maybe not able to keep up with their job. And then you've got those who are very competent and very successful. They do a good job, but they have a really stinking attitude. You don't really like to be around them a whole lot. God calls us to constantly improve. Life is about growing. Life is about constantly improving. But we have to be careful of life's, we could call them attitude adjusters. Someone called them attitude busters. So I want to share with you some attitude challenges that we face with regard to our attitude that could tip the scale. Number one, problems. Problems. No one is immune to problems, someone said. Even the lion has flies to fight. No one is immune to problems. There are people problems in life. There are work problems, there are family problems, there are school problems, there's money problems, there's health problems. Problems come, problems go, they're always there. And the challenge for you and I is not to be a part of the problem, but to be a part of the solution. We want to be a part of the solution. We want to turn obstacles into opportunities and also to get help from those who have converted problems into possibilities. Sometimes we look at problems and we cower before them, or we feel overwhelmed by them. But problems should be stepping stones to grow and to develop and to improve by God's grace. So problems is one of the attitude adjusters we've got to watch out for. Another attitude adjuster we've got to watch out for is self-pity. That's the why me syndrome. A person that dwells too much on the past and the bad things of the past, and they don't look toward the future. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever tried to drive your car by looking in the rearview mirror? Now, I'm not suggesting you try. Maybe in your own driveway, you can give it a whirl. But you know what I'm talking about. You wouldn't in your right mind, if you were in your right mind, look in the rearview mirror while you're driving forward, would you? No, it'd be disastrous for you and for everyone else on the road, maybe even those on the sidewalk. It'd be absolutely disastrous. But some folk are constantly, while they're trying to move forward, are looking in their rearview mirror. and aren't able to press on. They're not learning from their experiences, and they're not growing from their experiences. They're consoling themselves still and having those little pity parties. And then there's worry. That's an attitude adjuster. Worriers tend to give a small thing a big shadow. You know, many things that we worry about actually don't come true. Have you noticed that in life? The older I'm getting, the more I realize that all my worries or concerns, actually, they're actually nothing really to worry about. Worry doesn't fix anything anyway. And if things do come to pass, the things you've worried about, a lot of those things tend to be out of our control. So there's nothing we can really do about it anyway. And so what do? Well, you focus on what you can change. You hope in God. You trust in His Word. So be careful of worry. Also be careful of criticism. We live in a world where, especially with social media, people sitting in their basements in their pajamas are just lashing out on people. Very critical. Things they would say to people on social media they would never say to someone's face. People seem to feel like they've been given license to really go after people and attack people. Criticism. No one likes to be reprimanded, condemned, censured, or denounced. And so I appeal to each one of us, don't be critical on others either. Now, giving constructive criticism at times isn't a bad thing, but always do it by commending the person first, providing counsel to help make the adjustment, show them maybe how to do it, and then encourage them along the way as they make those changes. But beware of criticism. Don't let criticism stop you, hinder you. As Seventh-day Adventist Christians, we get criticized for things that some people don't get criticized for. People can be very harsh and critical on us as followers of Jesus. Don't let that stop you. Let your light shine brightly for Jesus. The last thing that you want to keep in mind when it comes to attitude adjusters, and that is fear of failure. Now, there are a lot of things that people fear in life, a lot of phobias. One of the biggest things people fear, is public speaking. That's one of the greatest things people fear, getting up front and talking to people. And I think many of us understand what that is and how that feels. But one of the other greatest fears people have, phobias, is a fear of failing. They don't want to fail. You remember the old saying, your attitude determines your altitude? Well, it's certainly true in this particular case. Instead of looking at failures as simply failures, look at them as stepping stones to success. There are many people who have failed their way to success. It was Thomas Edison who said when he was trying to figure out the light bulb, I haven't failed. I have just figured out 10,000 ways that don't work. God wants us to have a can-do attitude. I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. He doesn't want us moping around, complaining, feeling sorry for ourselves, worrying ourselves to death, being afraid of failure. He wants us to hope in Him and trust in Him. How would you feel if you went to the dentist and you had a cavity, it was really sore in there, and you went to the best dentist in Sacramento. You went there because he is the best. You heard he was the best. You get there, you sit in the chair, the dentist looks at your teeth, looks at the x-rays, tells you, okay, you've got a cavity here and here and here. And then he looks at you and says, what on earth were you thinking? What are you doing? Why are you eating all the sweets you're eating? Why are you taking terrible care of your teeth? Why aren't you flossing? Because you're not taking care of your teeth, you know what? I'm not going to take care of your teeth today either. Here you've got a dentist with great aptitude, but he's got a really poor what? Attitude. You're about to go into the ring with the heavyweight champion of the world. And your attitude is soaring. I'm going to take this guy down. I'm going to be the next heavyweight champion of the world. The only problem is you've never had any training. Is your attitude going to help you win the fight in that boxing ring that day? No. You and I both need attitude and aptitude if we're going to be successful, if we're going to let our light shine brightly for Jesus. What do you say? I want to close by reading a statement, and it puts it all into perspective with regard to God's people. And it's found in Christ Object Lessons, and it says, it is not the capabilities you now possess or ever will possess that will give you success. And you're saying, well, hold on a second. We just got through talking about abilities and skills and aptitude. It's not done yet. It's not the capabilities you now possess or ever will that will give you success in shining your light bright for Jesus. It is that which the Lord can do for you. She's making sure we don't get ill-balanced here, trusting in our abilities, performing, trusting in the works that we do. Okay, we're doing everything right, so everything's going to be fine. We must trust God. It's not the abilities you now possess or ever will that will give you success. It is that which the Lord can do for you. She goes on to say, He longs for you to expect great things from Him. He longs for it, to expect great things from Him. And then she closes this paragraph by saying, put your talents into the work. Put your skills, your talents, your aptitudes, put your talents into the work. Ask God for wisdom, and it will be given to you. You see how this works, friends? You see how this works? You give your best, and you trust God with everything. God expects us to give Him our best. He expects us to give Him our minds, to let Him create a purpose for living in our lives, to help us sort out our life priorities so that we can take charge of our lives again for His honor and for His glory. He wants us to constantly improve in our skills and in our attitudes and in our aptitudes. He wants our lives to shine brightly for Him. The book of Revelation tells us that in Revelation chapter 18 and verse 1, that another angel came down from heaven and lightened the earth with its glory. That, my friends, is a prophecy of God's people who allow their lives to shine brightly for God all the way through the greatest trial and the greatest trouble this world will ever see, all the way to the very end. The light will shine, there'll be a witness, many will be called in. The prophecies are being fulfilled all around us today. There is no question on earth. The question is, will the prophecy of Revelation 18:1 be fulfilled in your life? Will you burn brightly for Jesus now so that you might continue to burn brightly for Him throughout the time that's coming? I hope that's your prayer. I hope that's your aim, your desire today. If it is, I want to encourage you to raise your hand. You want to burn brightly for Jesus today. Amen. God bless you, friends.